It's the summer of 2007, and maybe your birthday just passed, and you received a GameStop gift card and some actual cash. Combined total is $55. Time to go to our local GameStop. Now, you have limited funds. It's not as if you could buy out the entire store, so you gotta be selective. Oh, look at that. Castlevania, Dawn of Sorrow for 20 bucks. Hell yeah. What's that in the corner of my eye? A ported version of Final Fantasy VI on the Game Boy Advance? Absolutely. I'll take one of both, please. So now you own these games, and that's what you're going to be focusing on for the next 6 months. And goddamn, did you love those games. CatPat, that was an oddly specific story. Was that perhaps about you? No! Shut up, big butthead. But I think it's safe to assume that as children, maybe we wondered what it would be like to have a massive wall full of video games. Just everything at your disposal. How cool would that be? Maybe it's not. And I say this as someone who genuinely loves playing video games. I've experienced titles that were very thoughtful, moving, emotional, and even contained philosophical messages. And sure, the crux of a video game is that it actually has to be fun too. And some games are just simply that, fun. It can literally bring people together. It can bring families together in the same vein as Friday board game night. However, not all video games are amazing. In fact, I would argue a lot of them are really bad. Like really, really bad. And this is where I would argue maybe turning your basement into EB Games circa 2001 might not be a good idea. And I understand that some of you are going to just flat out disagree with me. Perhaps you have enough money and you can just collect things and that's it. However, I still think you might be able to take something from this. This isn't going to be a video where I present my morally superior gaming take. I've always been a believer in moderation, even if I failed at that many, many times. Instant gratification is a bitch. And usually how I combat this is that I just sell the things that I have no value in anymore. And I don't mean sell everything that isn't practical. Let's not go on the extremes here. You know, if that was the case, it would be a very depressing sight. It'd be like a single table and a couch. Sad. I'm a complete advocate of surrounding your environment with things that make you you. Something that speaks to you. Beauty and art and media. Any of that stuff. Having a spot that completely breathes you. And that's really the drive behind this entire video. Why own things that don't matter to you? And with video games, it's very easy to go overboard with this. So we're going to go down the list of some traps you might find yourself in when it comes to game collecting in general. Here we go. Usually, weekly, there are sales on digital storefronts. PSN, eShop, Steam, you name it. And wow, holy shit, it's Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Game of the Year Edition with everything included, all the DLCs, for $6. Damn, what a steal. And yes, it is. But you have to do one thing. Actually complete the fucking game! Now, there's a common phrase in the gaming scene that you have maybe said before or had a friend that said it or something you may have heard in passing in general. And that's usually, man, do I have a big backlog of games to play. This is how this happens. It's these sales. This is how you find yourself in that trap. And that's not to say that you don't find an absolute great deal on a game and you actually savor every moment of it. That's completely possible. But how many times have you bought in a game because it was on sale, and although it's critically acclaimed and your friends say good things about it, that it just ends up sitting on your shelf or sitting in your Steam library and you just don't touch it. Or maybe you do for an hour and you just don't give a shit. This is why I personally used Oblivion as an example. I almost bought that game. But when I sit back and realize that I don't really even give a shit about Elder Scrolls games, I just didn't buy it. And you can argue that if the price is low enough, is the trade-off really that bad if you waste a couple bucks? You know what? Fair argument. But it takes two things. Money and time. Now, this isn't where I segue that video games are a waste of time, but playing something or indulging in some kind of media you don't enjoy is literally wasting time. Have you found yourself forcing yourself into games, forcing yourself to complete that? I have, and I'm not trying to give a hot take, but that's how I felt with Ocarina of Time. I wasn't there in 1990 whenever that came out. I was there when I played the remake of it on the 3DS, and I completed it, and I felt nothing. And guess what? I ended up selling that after that too. Now, for those who remember cable television, which is probably most of you, it's very easy to find yourself just slouching there, surfing through channels, constantly trying to find something to entertain us. However, it's not 8 o'clock, your favorite show isn't around, and maybe you've got nothing to do. So you find yourself wasting your time on shows that are either mediocre or worse, fucking bad. Now, this scenario actually never went away. It's really easy to do literally the same thing through Netflix. Maybe you just completed one of your favorite shows, you've already watched all the movies you wanted to on Netflix, but you find yourself searching for something else to fill in that void of excitement. Video games are not void from this circumstance either. This is how we complete games that we never really even cared about. And maybe you never had a real interest in the Elder Scrolls series. It's just not your cup of tea. But maybe you do, because it's $6 now and you've got nothing to do. You buy me now? Ooh woo? Now maybe some of us are sane enough to recognize this pattern and get up and do something else. Maybe not all the time, but this is definitely the correct strategy. These kinds of people use their boredom, usually to create, read, catch up with a friend, finish a few tasks that you know you've been pushing off. After all, usually there is something to do. And I realize this might take actual effort, but if you weren't enjoying yourself playing the Elder Scrolls anyway, why even bother? It's not inspiring, it doesn't move you, waste of time. So you might as well use that time to get a few things done. And then when the good game does come around, you'll be able to enjoy that. You'll be ready to take on that piece of media that grips you with a clear conscience. Another common thing I hear in the gaming collecting realm is usually a phrase that sort of goes like this. I really loved the first 2 games, absolutely adored them, but that last one, I just could not get into it. I really didn't enjoy it. But I have to get it because I am a fan of the series after all. No, you don't. In fact, I recently watched a YouTuber do this.
I was so disappointed and I'm still gutted. But I'll tell you this much. If they released like a physical copy from Limited Run or some other company out there, some Strictly Limited, I would buy it. Because I'm a Ghouls and Ghosts fan. I would have it as part of the collection because it's there.
Now, I have issues with this line of thinking for many reasons. One being is, why buy a game you don't even enjoy just because the previous titles were actually good? The previous titles have no bearing of the quality of this current title. Irrelevant. And 2, and this one's really important, what do you think you can do to show a company your opinion about said title? Is it making a YouTube review video? Maybe that helps. Is it bitching about it on Twitter? That might garner some attention. I got something even better for you though. The way a game company can see what your opinion is on a game is if you buy the game or you simply don't. Now, when you cough up the dough for a mediocre or bad game, what kind of message do you think that sends out to the publisher? Well, people are buying it. They must like it. Let's continue making the game exactly like this. And for any naysayers, you're completely naive to think that this couldn't happen, because it's happening in a very large-scale format. All I have to say is 2 words. Star Wars. When you look at The Last Jedi, I think most people can agree that that film is one of the most polarizing pieces of cinema this current generation. I don't think that's an understatement. Now, what's funny is that the budget for this film was $300 million. You think, shit, with a controversy like that, probably made no money back, right? It made $1.3 billion. Why? Because it's called Star Wars. That is the power of branding. And sure, Rian Johnson, the director of The Last Jedi, wasn't affiliated with the next Star Wars film, Rise of Skywalker. But despite that, another polarizing film came out. Guess what? It didn't matter. It still made millions and billions of dollars. The loyalists and the diehards will still pay to go see a movie they don't like just because they enjoyed 3 out of 9 Star Wars films. If you don't like something, don't pay for it. Wait and see what everyone else says. And maybe you were the first sucker, so maybe you can be the voice to the masses. Sure. If you ever wondered why a video game, novel, film, or any iconic series with a powerful presence can survive despite the current title having a severe lack of polish. This is how. Your wallet. My overall point with this is if it doesn't speak to you, don't participate. The end. Now, in a positive light, the games that have good memories tied to them. Maybe after a long week of work and school, it's Friday night, and you and your family would always come together. It's in a ritual to play Mario Party 2. Maybe you're a teenager and it's summer vacation, and you happen to have an Xbox, and your friend happens to have an Xbox, and you decide to connect the two, so you can play 8-player, Team Deathmatch, and Halo 2. Maybe you find yourself at the electronics shop, and you find Chrono Cross in the bargain bin for $20. And because of that game, you realize that video games can be more than beeps and boops and high scores. It can be a very moving, emotional, and transcendent experience. All of these scenarios are important. They are key elements in your life. I think this goes without saying, but if something has that much integral value to you, for God's sakes, hold on to that. That is sentimentality. I mean, it's more than a game at that point. And you know, I currently have a PlayStation 4, and there's some games that really spoke out to me that are newer, like Nier Automata. And I still like games, so I continue to buy them. But over time, I look over my collection, and if something doesn't resonate with me, I will get rid of it. But there's something that I won't get rid of, and it's my PlayStation 1 games. That was the system I grew up with. As I got older, I thought I'd try out a few titles that I may have missed out on. And you know what? I fell in love with Xenogears and Parasite Eve. Great. However, some of the other games that I collected, PlayStation 1 specifically, not so much. When I was younger, I really enjoyed Bushido Blade 2. It was a very unique fighting game. Basically, as if you left yourself open, all it takes is one strike and you're dead. That's it. So years later, I picked up the first one and I gave it a shot, and it was very different. It was different mechanically, and content-wise, there really wasn't a lot going on for it. Very unique, good starting point. Just, to me, not as good as the second one. Just didn't click. I really enjoyed Breath of Fire 4, loved the sprite work in that game, and I picked up 3 years later. It didn't click. I loved Wild Arms 2 as a kid. I don't know if that one has ages gracefully, but, you know, there's the nostalgia factor in that. And I played the first one, and you guessed it, it didn't click. The thing was, guys, I found myself collecting games I had no intention of completing, or at least convinced myself maybe one day. Why? Why would I spend my day doing manual labor to earn money only for a game to collect dust on a shelf? So I can say that I own a rare game? Who gives a shit? And sure, you'll have some friends that think it's neat, but assuming they're good friends, they don't care about that as much as your company. When you die at 86 and your family and loved ones are surrounding your casket, no one is going to say, Patrick was neat. He owned Seiken Densetsu 3 on the Super Famicom. Maybe that's too intense of a thought, but honestly, that's what convinced myself to just get rid of the things that I just don't find integral to my life. Now, because I do enjoy playing video games, I'll still buy them, but every so often I'll go over my shelf and ask myself if there's still sentimental value here. And if not, there's a new listing on eBay. Now, if you made it this far in the video, you may be thinking, Jesus Christ, Patrick, you're putting way too much thought into this. And you know what? I'm not going to dispute that. But I'm sorry, that's just how my mind works. When you buy a video game, you're buying a project. Maybe it's a 4-hour project. Maybe it's an 80-hour one. Let's make damn sure it's meaningful. Here's something to think about. When do we have cake? Birthdays, weddings, graduations, basically any kind of celebratory moment. And these events are not everyday occurrences in your personal life. So you know that when you're having cake, something special is happening here. Now imagine eating cake every single day. You would get fat, and when those celebrations come around, you would find nothing special about it at all. And that's what it's like consuming meaningless content consistently. We live in an age where we have so many options when it comes to video games, and I find that more of a reason to be imperative to be way more selective when you're choosing a game. When people are presented with a ton of options, you sit there and think a lot more than actually picking something and doing it. I know at the end of the day, having options is a good thing, but let's hope you have a filter, because otherwise you're going to be stuck. Look, we're adults now, and we have money. Now, obviously, economic stances are different person to person, but you can play really good games even on a budget nowadays. I mean, the market is just so oversaturated that even the cost of high quality games are dirt cheap. So as a kid, we may have wished for a giant wall of video games, but ironically, due to our limitations, such as being a dumb 12-year-old and not having a job, it made us value the games we actually had the privilege of completing. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make your New Year's resolution list and complete your goals. Happy New Year.